research, we were interested in how established companies work with startup companies, new venture firms, and especially how established companies need to adopt their supplier management practices in order to work with startup suppliers as suppliers. So we were interested basically in transferring the relational capabilities that companies have to the startup supplier environment. And this is what we studied there. Well, we first of all, companies told us that this is something that they increasingly have to look into, because startup companies are companies with particular traits. They have less resources, they are less structured, they have not the legitimacy that you would expect from an established company. And you simply, that what the companies told us before we kind of started our formal process is that these companies have to be treated in a different way. You cannot just apply your standard supply evaluation procedures to a startup company, because oftentimes they cannot deliver what another established supplier would able to be delivered. And for this particular project then, we set up a kind of formal project where we collected data, qualitative data, so it's interview based, where we interviewed startup companies and established firms, and we collected data on the buyer-supplier diet. In total, we looked into 14 of these diets in order to study, what are the kind of the requirements of the startups and how do the established firms go about that. In total, 21 interviews with companies mainly based in Switzerland and in Germany. So the startup companies are companies, or the new venture firms are the companies that have been in business for up to 6 years. So that's kind of our cutoff that we had defining a new venture firm. And the established firms were larger companies with 15 million in turnover and larger, and different industries, some service, mainly manufacturing type of industries. Well, the most important thing that we found that came out of this exploratory theory building research was a construct or a variable which we call a new venture partnering capability, which is the capability of a buying firm to partner with a new venture firm. And this kind of elaborate construct that we developed hypothesis out of it consisted of a section where we looked into supply evaluation. So in here, supply evaluation means that the buying firm needs to be more flexible in terms of which evaluation criteria to apply. Second, a buying firm needs to be more kind of flexible in terms of the level of the criteria fulfillment that would be expected from a new venture supplier as opposed to an established one. Give you one example, a new venture firm is not able to provide you with the financial information and turnover of the last couple of years because they're just new into business. So this evaluation is one aspect. The second kind of part of this new venture partnering capability is supply development, where we looked into and how supply development needs to be done when the supply is a new venture firm as opposed to an established one. And one aspect in this is that the buying firm, if it possesses new venture partnering capability, needs to be simply more open to provide supply development investments, first of all. Second, needs to be faster in the procedures to decide about supply development as opposed to an established firm. Because for a new venture firm, oftentimes it's decisive that the project with this buying firm is success or moves forward within weeks and months. The new venture firm doesn't have as much time as many of the established suppliers in selling a product, commercializing it with the buying company. So supply development was important to be different than from the established one. Another component was communication that we looked into. We kind of covered this in we call it governance, how the new venture firm and the buying firm, they work together. So the communication needs to be more frequent, more open as opposed to an established firm, because a new venture firm doesn't have the procedures, they need more feedback, they are less hierarchical than an established company. So this needs to be reflected in the way how the buying firm communicates with the new venture as opposed to established one. And the fourth component was the type of governance. So do we have a contract or don't we have a contract? Do we have formal controls or informal controls? And for partnering with a new venture, informal controls are more important. Exclusivity contracts is something that buying firms should not have and ask for with a new venture firm. Otherwise, there might be a limitation of the growth potential of the new venture firm, because they also want to offer products and services to others. They need to grow and need to enlarge their customer base. So these were some of the major component of this new venture partnering capability construct that we developed, kind of theory around that. So the benefits are, in general, what we looked into is kind of the effectiveness of new venture partnering. And the effectiveness in most of the cases was, do we achieve our goal? And the goal of the buying firm was in most of the cases that they need to obtain innovation from the supply base in general. And nowadays, if innovation is needed from the supply base, we cannot always go to established companies because we have disruptive technologies, we have technologies that are new in the market, and oftentimes they come from startup and new venture suppliers. So the positive outcome if a company possesses new venture partnering capability is that they obtain more innovation, they are kind of more on the leading edge of getting that innovation into their firm through this new venture company. So this is one of the major benefits that we see. And that the firm saw, and that's why they engaged in new venture partnering. Yeah, definitely. In general, I think there's a huge potential in doing research on the operation, supply chain, and entrepreneurship interface. And in this particular case, studying new ventures as suppliers, there's more to be done. A future avenue is how should buying firms organize for that? So now we have this more abstract capability of new venture partnering, but how is that implemented in the processes and especially in the organization? Maybe in the future, purchasing is not the lead on new venture partnering, but there might be other organizational units involved. Some of them might not exist yet. We saw companies that kind of established a separate department that specifically looking for new ventures as suppliers to partner with them. So it's basically the organization. How do you organize a company in order to tap that potential? This is one. And then, of course, in our research, which was qualitative, you always can go and collect large-scale data in order to show the positive effect of having this capability on a desired outcome. This is definitely something that we would like to do on a larger scale. I think these are two main avenues for future research.